pause my video and I'm going to stop screen sharing and I'm going to invite Luciano to the screen. Hey there, Luciano. It's all yours, dear.
Thank you, Avon. Well, I'm going to switch to Spanish, from Spanglish to Spanish.
Vamos a hablar en español.
Bueno, buen día. Mi nombre, como dije, es Luciano, pero esta presentación no va a empezar como empiezan otras, con adultos hablando. Va a empezar con las voces de Kimberly y de Allison, y en su voz también vamos a escuchar a las voces de otros y otros niños, niñas, adolescentes con padres encarcelados de nuestra región. Así que les paso el micrófono a ellas.
Para mí, ir a ver a mi papá es un sacrificio. Solo iba a verlo a él. La revisión es asquerosa. Quieren que nos bajemos los pantalones o nos levantemos la falda. Me siento sucia y vista. Para mí eso era lo peor. Además, que en la cárcel hay muchos hombres pervertidos, que mientras una va caminando en el área de la habitación del papá, van diciéndole cosas como piropos sucios, aunque las muchachas sean muy jovencitas.
Alison, las compañeras de Chile están por ahí. Está silenciada, Alison. Ahí está.
Sí, aquí. Ya. Como les decía, lo ideal sería recibir la ayuda del Estado para aquellas familias. Los centros penitenciarios se ubiquen más cerca de donde ellos están, y si no se pudiera, ayuda económica del Estado a esas familias.
Que mi mamá esté en prisión domiciliaria tiene sus pros y sus contras. Sus pros es que está con nosotros en mi casa. No tenemos que estar en un lugar de amparo donde yo perdería todo, contacto con mis amigos, y mis hermanos pasarían mal. Y los contras es que como ella está presa con tobillera y no puede salir de la casa, yo por ser el más grande tengo que ayudar en casi todo. Hacer mandados, ayudarlos con mis hermanos, llevarlos a la escuela, y no puedo salir con mis amigos a divertirme como hacía antes.
Lo ideal sería que las personas estuvieran capacitadas para realizar intervenciones con niñas, niños y jóvenes.
Se debería escuchar nuestras voces porque somos parte de la familia. Mi nombre es Kimberly, tengo 15 años y soy de Uruguay.
Nos tratan como delincuentes o como nuestras familias son, como que somos todos los mismos y no debiera ser así. Mi nombre es Allison, tengo 17 y soy de Chile.
Bueno, muchas gracias. Ahora sí me presento, mi nombre es Luciano Cadoni, trabajo en la Oficina Regional para América Latina y el Caribe de Church World Service. Church World Service es parte de la plataforma NAPES, que es la plataforma regional por la defensa de los niños, niñas y adolescentes con padres encarcelados. Y Kimberly y Allison son parte de dos de las organizaciones que trabajan en Uruguay y Chile y que son parte de la plataforma NAPES. Las frases que ellas leyeron son las que surgen de un proceso de participación que se dio y que giró alrededor de analizar las recomendaciones del Comité de Derechos del Niño del año 2011, sobre las que habló hoy a la mañana la profesora Ann Skelton. Pero eso de alguna manera es hoy en día el final de esta historia que ya tiene alrededor de 8 años. Para que nos cuente un poquito de cómo fue que ese proceso se ha llevado a cabo en estos años, ese proceso de visibilización, de sensibilización, de promoción y protección de los derechos de los más de 2 millones de niños y adolescentes que viven en nuestra región y que se enfrentan a esta problemática, quiero invitar a Gonzalo Salles, director de la organización uruguaya Gurises Unidos y miembro de la Secretaría Ejecutiva de la plataforma. Así que te quiero pedir, Gonzalo, que brevemente nos cuentes un poco cómo ha sido este trabajo, cómo se pensó, cómo se planificó y cómo se logró de alguna manera visibilizar un tema que hasta hace unos años en nuestra región era invisible.
Gracias, Luciano, gracias, Kimberly, gracias, Allison, por por sus palabras, por compartir lo que otros niños, niñas y adolescentes con un referente adulto privado de libertad en América Latina piensan, sienten y viven. Así que les agradezco. Primero que nada, es un placer para nosotros como plataforma NAPES ser parte de esta red. Agradezco también a Luciano como miembro de la plataforma que nos represente en este espacio tan importante. Contarle un poquito qué es la plataforma NAPES y cómo surge. Nosotros somos un grupo de organizaciones no gubernamentales que básicamente trabajamos en niñez y adolescencia. Tenemos algunas otras organizaciones que trabajan con el tema de familiares de privados de libertad, pero la inmensa mayoría somos organizaciones que trabajamos por la defensa de los derechos de niños, niñas y adolescentes, que en determinado momento, ya hace 9 años, definimos conformar una red que trabajara específicamente por la defensa de los derechos de niños, niñas y adolescentes con un referente adulto privado de libertad. ¿Y por qué? Ahí arranco rapidito en el origen. ¿Por qué hicimos esto? Porque ese grupo de organizaciones veíamos que trabajando en territorio, en las comunidades, como hoy hablaba la exponente anterior, y trabajando con niñez y adolescencia, nos empezamos a poner en contacto de manera más seguida y de manera más frecuente con la realidad de estos niños que tenían un referente adulto privado de libertad, y empezamos a darnos cuenta que estos niños que tenían un referente adulto privado de libertad tenían vulneraciones a sus derechos específicas y que necesitaban respuestas específicas dada su condición de tener a ese papá o esa mamá privada de libertad. En ese tiempo, estas organizaciones que trabajábamos distintas problemáticas de infancia, trabajamos el tema de explotación sexual comercial, trabajo infantil, niños en situación de calle, dijimos, conformemos una red regional, capaz que hay otros aprendizajes, otras organizaciones que puedan sumarse a esta razón, a este gran objetivo. Y ahí nos pusimos en contacto con algo que para nosotros fue muy fuerte, que fue el tema del día de debate del Comité de los Derechos del Niño. Día de debate que cumple en el día de mañana 10 años, que el Comité de los Derechos del Niño hace una serie de recomendaciones a los estados sobre la problemática que hasta aquel momento era invisible de los niños con referentes a adultos privados de libertad. Y es ahí que decidimos conformar esta red de ONGs con un único objetivo, la defensa de los derechos de niños, niñas y adolescentes con referentes a adultos privados de libertad. Nos convertimos y nos transformamos en una red, en una plataforma de incidencia en política pública a nivel regional, con 3 grandes líneas de trabajo. La primera línea tiene que ver con la generación de conocimiento, y eso tiene que ver con una recomendación que el propio comité nos hacía, o le hacía a los estados. El comité decía, no hay información de cuántos son y cuáles son las características de estos niños, niñas y adolescentes con referentes a adultos privados de libertad. La plataforma decidimos generar, primera línea, generación de conocimiento. Segunda línea, el componente que para nosotros es vital y fundamental de promover la participación de niños y niñas, escuchando y levantando su voz, su sentir y su perspectiva en relación a los temas que les competen. En este caso, en la temática de tener un referente adulto privado de libertad. Y el tercer componente, la tercera línea, es la línea de incidencia en política pública, la línea propiamente de advocacy. Lo que tiene que ver con la generación de conocimiento desde la plataforma, siguiendo las recomendaciones del Comité de los Derechos del Niño, pensamos en 2 dimensiones. Una dimensión cualitativa, de caracterización, cuál es la realidad que viven y tienen los niños, niñas y adolescentes con referentes a adultos privados de libertad en la región, y otra cuantitativa. Nosotros hemos hecho, hace 9 años que venimos haciendo un esfuerzo sostenido de poder saber qué dimensión, cuántos son estos niños y niñas en cada uno de los países que conforman América Latina y el Caribe. El Estado no sabe, los gobiernos no saben. Y ahí hemos hecho un aporte sustantivo a la hora de poder pensar prácticas y políticas públicas para este tema. Ahí hay una serie, no quiero entrar, Luciano de las podemos poner y compartir. Hay una serie de materiales, de publicaciones, de estudios que están, la gran mayoría en español, obviamente, porque es el idioma que predomina en América Latina y el Caribe, pero hay muchos de ellos que están en inglés y que los invito, de verdad, a poder darles una lectura. Dentro, ahí hay primeros estudios. Todos los estudios que hemos hecho han tenido una característica fundamental, que es, aparte del estudio académico, aparte de estudiar bibliografía, aparte de entrevistar a decisores de política pública, siempre buscamos consultar y tener la voz de los niños, niñas y adolescentes. Porque para nosotros esa es la forma o la mejor forma de construir y desarrollar política pública, que es construir política pública tomando en cuenta la perspectiva de los beneficiarios de la política pública. Entonces, si nosotros queremos construir e incidir en la política pública que hace o que impacta en niños, niñas y adolescentes con referentes a adultos privados de libertad, se vuelve sustantivo y fundamental poder consultarlos a ellos. En la inmensa mayoría lo hemos consultado a niños y niñas de toda la región. Hemos hecho ahora, va a hablar Victor Giorgi, que es el director del Instituto Interamericano del Niño de la OEA, pero hicimos una orientación técnica en conjunto con ellos, con el equipo técnico del IN, donde básicamente hicimos una serie de recomendaciones a los sistemas de infancia de los 33 estados o países que integran el IN y que integran la OEA. Hemos hecho también materiales de sensibilización. Insisto, lo que nos hemos centrado es en poder brindarle insumos a los decisores de política pública para que puedan generar acciones, programas y políticas dirigidas a estos niños e incorporen la voz de estos niños. Entonces, decimos, la participación, el segundo eje de la plataforma, ha sido nodular y pensamos la participación para dentro de nuestra red. Cada vez que tenemos asambleas anuales, contamos con la participación en vivo de ellos. Para la elaboración de nuestras planificaciones estratégicas y planes anuales, sistemáticamente hemos, a lo largo de estos 9 años, levantado su voz y su mirada. Y el último punto tiene que ver con el componente de incidencia, y ahí termina Luciano. Básicamente, en el componente de incidencia hemos hecho muchísimo hincapié en lo que tiene que ver con el sistema interamericano de derechos humanos. Es así que hemos participado de distintas instancias, como es la Comisión Interamericana de Derechos Humanos. Para eso, ahí fuimos con un adolescente, y ahí surgen una serie de recomendaciones a los estados también. Hemos logrado que por primera vez la Corte Interamericana reciba en una audiencia pública, en vez de adultos, reciba a adolescentes, a niños, con referentes a adultos privados de libertad, transmitiéndole el sentir y el pensar de niños, niñas y adolescentes a lo largo de la región. Básicamente, esas es las grandes acciones en clave, la trayectoria que hemos hecho en estos 9 años y los grandes hitos que hemos tenido en clave de incidencia en política pública.
Bueno, gracias Gonzalo. Y Gonzalo ya lo nombró, tenemos con nosotros, a quien obviamente le agradecemos mucho, al profesor Victor Giorgi, quien dirige el Instituto Interamericano del Niño de la OEA desde el año 2015. Así que, bueno, Víctor, muchas gracias por estar con nosotros. Te invito básicamente a que compartas también, en línea con lo que hizo Gonzalo, algunas reflexiones en relación al trabajo que se ha hecho en conjunto entre el Instituto y la plataforma, y que compartas, no sé, algunas ideas, algunas miradas, y cuáles han sido para vos las acciones claves y cuánto te parece que se ha avanzado en este sentido.
Muchas gracias, Luciano, muchas gracias, Gonzalo, un saludo muy especial a todos los que nos están escuchando y acompañando en esta temática tan relevante y tan sensible en la región de América Latina, ¿verdad? Yo me quedé pensando en las palabras de Allison y de Kimberly en relación a lo que es la vivencia de los niños, niñas, adolescentes que viven esta situación, ¿verdad? Y cómo ese sufrimiento, esa situación ha sido durante muchos años algo que estaba invisibilizado, donde los gobiernos de la región desarrollan políticas de seguridad basadas en el encarcelamiento, cada vez más gente en la cárcel y durante más tiempo, y de alguna manera se presentan frente a la población como paladines de la paz y de la seguridad, y se invisibiliza esta otra cara de esas políticas, ¿verdad? Que es justamente la sobrevulnerabilidad que genera en las familias y especialmente en los niños, niñas y adolescentes. ¿Y por qué digo sobrevulnerabilidad? Porque una de las características de América Latina es que no solo nos encontramos con las situaciones como las que relataba Kimberly, de lo difícil, lo traumático, lo desagradable que puede ser la visita a un establecimiento carcelario, que es un tema muy relevante, sino que nos encontramos con niños y niñas sobre los cuales confluyen muchos factores de vulnerabilidad. La población que está privada de libertad en América Latina son fundamentalmente hombres, jóvenes y pobres. Y últimamente ha habido un incremento muy importante de mujeres, vinculados sobre todo a delitos menores, a delitos vinculados a la venta de drogas, incluso al ingreso de drogas al propio establecimientos carcelarios. Y eso hace que sus familias sean familias sumamente vulnerables. Se trata de personas sin inserción en el sistema productivo, que tuvieron esta conducta como último recurso de sobrevivencia en situaciones donde no había otras oportunidades y donde sus hijos, sus hijas y las personas a su cargo también han sufrido estas situaciones. Muchas veces hay entornos de violencia, tanto en lo barrial, en lo territorial, como en las propias familias. Hay toda una serie de estigmatizaciones, ¿verdad? Justamente una de las frases que se decía es que tratan a toda la familia como si fueran delincuentes. Y eso no solo se da en el establecimiento carcelario o en el control policial, sino que se da también en el barrio, en la escuela, en los espacios de jóvenes. Y de acá la necesidad de que se desarrollen políticas integrales con esta población, ¿verdad? Que no es solamente humanizar la visita o hacerlo más linda, más amigable, que sería un paso importante, sin duda, pero hay que atender también la globalidad de la situación, chicos y chicas. Y en ese marco nosotros descubrimos, de alguna manera, en el contacto con la plataforma NAPES, tomamos conciencia de esta enorme cantidad de niños y niñas que viven esta situación de la región, y cómo este es un factor de vulnerabilidad que generalmente no se incluye en los estudios. Nosotros hablamos de los estudios, hablamos de etnia, hablamos de familias migrantes, hablamos de la violencia, hablamos de enfermedades de distinto tipo, pero no solemos incluir esta variable, incluso cuando hablamos, por ejemplo, de la pérdida del cuidado familiar por parte de los niños y niñas, ¿verdad? Hablamos de muchas cosas, pero no hablamos de la prisión de los adultos de referencia como un factor determinante de estos problemas. Entonces, a partir de este contacto y de este enriquecimiento mutuo con la plataforma NAPES, empezamos a pujar por incluir este factor de vulnerabilidad en distintos sectores. Y lo hemos ido encontrando en las migraciones, donde hay muchas veces familiares privados de libertad, en situaciones de violencia, en las situaciones de pérdida de cuidados y de institucionalización de niños, en las situaciones de trabajo infantil, en las situaciones de explotación sexual. O sea, vamos a empezar a encontrar esta variable que tiene un enorme peso, no por sí sola, sino en confluencia, en intersección con todo lo demás. Y en ese marco es que comenzamos a marchar juntos con la plataforma NAPES en nuestros diferentes roles, ¿verdad? La plataforma NAPES es una organización no gubernamental o un conjunto de organizaciones que tienen básicamente una tarea de incidencia. Nosotros tenemos una tarea de asistencia técnica a los estados. Y eso hace una combinación muy interesante, ¿verdad? Porque no solo es incidir, presionar, hacer ver, sino que también es proponer y ayudar a implementar. Y fue así que empezamos a abrir espacios a la plataforma en diferentes momentos de encuentro, reuniones de nuestro consejo directivo, reuniones del Congreso Interamericano de Niñas y Adolescentes, y a elaborar materiales conjuntos. Elaboramos un material sobre una orientación técnica que implica un análisis del problema y una serie de orientaciones, indicaciones para los estados y para los diferentes actores involucrados. Una de ellas tiene una gran coincidencia con lo que hoy decían justamente los chicos, ¿verdad? La necesidad de tener gente capacitada en las instituciones en esta temática y poder trabajar con niños, niñas y adolescentes. También elaboramos un curso en esta línea para poder justamente dar la oportunidad a las instituciones, a los gobiernos, de tener gente formada en la medida que tuvieran voluntad de hacerlo. Y cuando decimos gente formada, no nos referimos a especialistas que estén en un programa específico, sino la posibilidad de impregnar, digamos, todo el sistema de protección y todas las instituciones que tienen que ver con esto, del sistema carcelario, el sistema judicial, el policial, los organismos de protección, de que todo esto tenga presencia de personas sensibles y con herramientas como para comprender y apoyar e intervenir de una manera protectora y reparatoria en la situación de los niños y niñas y adolescentes. Y en ese contexto...
Perdón, Víctor, nada, ahora si podemos te doy unos minutitos más al final, o si querés como ir cerrando, así le damos. Dale, perfecto, sí.
No, que en ese contexto también la convicción nuestra junto con la plataforma NAPES es que no se trata de visibilizar y hablar de los niños, niñas y adolescentes de esta situación, sino también de escucharlos. Y ahí el tema de la participación, de escuchar sus voces, de introducir sus voces en los diferentes espacios. Con esto me quedo.
Genial, me diste el pie, perfecto, porque justamente, como contaba, las frases que las chicas leyeron al principio son parte de un proceso de participación que se dio en 5 de los países donde trabajan los miembros de plataforma NAPES, pero no lo quiero contar yo, quiero que nos cuenten ellas, así que voy a empezar por Alison, nuestra compañera de Chile, a quien le quiero preguntar o le quiero pedir si nos puede contar un poco de lo que estuvieron haciendo en este tiempo con sus compañeros de la organización En Marcha, y cuáles fueron los aprendizajes y las conclusiones que sacaron.
Sí. Bueno, nosotros realizamos varias actividades donde hablamos sobre la realidad de cada uno de nosotros. Las realidades se sienten como si fueran tuyas. Más que nada la gente hablaba de lo difícil que es hablar sobre esto frente a otras personas, de cómo se discrimina a las personas que tienen familiares privados de libertad. No es una vida fácil. Y en ese entorno todos podemos compartir, ya que tenemos algo en común. Y se hace más fácil abrir esta realidad que puede dar vuelta al mundo y cambiarlo. Cambiar un poco todo lo que se vive y lo que han vivido miles de niños, niñas y jóvenes y sus familias en todo esto. Ha sido súper bueno todo, y más que nada se abre la realidad de que a veces uno no sabe por lo que las otras personas pasan, y se abre una nueva realidad. Y el aprendizaje, más que nada la empatía hacia otras personas, de no juzgar si no sabemos la verdadera historia y aprender a escuchar la realidad de las personas.
Buenísimo, muchas gracias. Kimberly, ¿qué me podés contar vos de lo que hicieron en Uruguay? ¿Cuál fue el aprendizaje que te quedó a vos?
Bueno, yo conocí a otros niños y niñas que vivieron las mismas o cosas parecidas, similares a lo que yo viví, y aprendí que existían estas recomendaciones del Comité de los Derechos del Niño, porque yo antes no las conocía, pasé por esta situación y no las conocía, y que el hecho de poder compartir mis experiencias con otros jóvenes y adultos me hizo muy bien, al escuchar y saber que no era la única gurisa adolescente que pasaba esta situación, que es traumática para todo el mundo, obviamente, pero al saber que no soy la única. Y que si esto cambia y se cumplen estas recomendaciones, no podía ser mejor para todos, nos ayudaría un montón.
Buenísimo. ¿Y las recomendaciones en sí, qué les parecieron, Alison? ¿Qué te parecieron? ¿Te parecieron que son relevantes, que son actuales, que falta alguna? ¿Cómo lo ves?
Son relevantes, me parece que son recomendaciones sumamente importantes y que debieran cumplirse más que nada, ya que yo creo que no solamente en Chile, sino en muchos países de Latinoamérica esto no se cumple y debiera hacerse cumplir como muchas otras cosas que se les ha prometido a los niños, a los jóvenes más que nada. Y de estas recomendaciones puede venir el cambio, que mientras más se hable todo esto puede hacer más ruido y la gente puede entender la realidad que viven las personas que tienen un familiar privado de libertad. Así de esta forma se puede dejar de jugar un poco la realidad que vivimos, las personas que hemos tenido, las personas con un familiar privado de libertad. Y sí, me parece que falta algo en esta recomendación, es que los medios de comunicación sepan cómo actuar frente a estos temas. No exponer a la familia si ellos no quieren y no forzar o no sacar información privada de la familia si ellos no están de acuerdo. Me parece que eso es algo muy importante que debería hacerse.
Gracias. Justo recién alguien, Nancy, que es la directora de INCCIP, hizo un comentario sobre cómo le llamaba la atención que las problemáticas, aunque vivimos en lugares tan diferentes, son tan similares. Y hoy a la mañana, una de las chicas que habló, también habló de las redes sociales y del impacto que puede tener para los chicos el ver información que no sea cuidada. Vos decías que estas recomendaciones deberían hacerse cumplir. Víctor contaba que se está haciendo un trabajo con los gobiernos para que estos gobiernos los cumplan. Así que yo la quería invitar a Kimberly, que pensara como si ella estuviera a cargo de lo que es el INAO, el Instituto del Niño en Uruguay, o de un organismo de protección. ¿Cuáles te parecen las recomendaciones más importantes o en cuál te pondrías a trabajar ya? ¿Cuál sería la prioridad?
Bueno, en una de las recomendaciones que yo me pondría a trabajar, si fuese INAO, sería la necesidad de la capacitación hacia maestros, policías y doctores para que sepa cómo ayudarnos a nosotros por la etapa que estamos pasando, porque a mí me pasó, yo viví esta situación, por ejemplo, a la escuela, que tenías problemas de conducta y los maestros no sabían cómo ayudarme en la situación mía, no sabían entenderme y no sabían lo que había pasado con mis padres. Y entonces no tenían en cuenta mi situación, porque era que yo actuaba así. Otra de la recomendación que me parece relevante es que tengan en cuenta la opinión de nosotros cuando hay que decidir a dónde vamos a ir, cuando nuestro familiar va preso. También preguntarnos si queremos ir a las visitas o no. Por último, hay que decir que nosotros no conocíamos estas recomendaciones porque no se dan a conocer y serían importantes que los estados las cumplan.
Bueno.
Nada más que decir. Gracias.
No, gracias a ustedes. Y en ustedes agradecerles a todos sus compañeros, a los que fueron parte de este ejercicio, al staff de las organizaciones que lo hizo, no solo en Chile, en Uruguay, sino que también en Nicaragua, en República Dominicana y en México. Así que mandarles un abrazo, agradecer a las compañeras de la consultora que llevó adelante este proceso, que se llama Nómade, y a la Secretaría y a la coordinación de la plataforma. Y perdón, Avon, pero voy a tomar 2 minutitos más, le quiero dar 1 minuto más a Gonzalo y 1 minuto más a Víctor para que cierren con alguna reflexión final, pensando un poquito en los desafíos y en lo que nos queda por delante. Gonzalo.
Voy a ser muy breve. Creo que en América Latina en estos 10 años de trabajo, 9 años de trabajo, hemos logrado poner, y con la ayuda de aliados, ¿no? Y ahí el INC ha sido un aliado estratégico con el cual seguiremos trabajando en conjunto. Pero hemos logrado poner en agenda el tema. Antes era un tema absolutamente invisible, hoy está en agenda. El desafío, creemos nosotros, es ese tema puesto en agenda, esas recomendaciones que surgen desde organismos internacionales, de los niños y niñas, de los técnicos, de los académicos, deben convertirse en programa y política pública. Ese es el gran desafío que tenemos. El segundo gran desafío, lo decía algo Víctor, tenemos que terminar con el tema del aumento de los privados de libertad, de los hombres y mujeres privados de libertad, sino cada vez en América Latina, al igual que el resto del mundo, hay un aumento de privados de libertad, por lo tanto hay más niños en esta situación. La prisión no puede ser la única respuesta que exista a los temas de seguridad en América Latina y el Caribe, y el elemento fundamental para nosotros es cómo profundizamos la construcción de política pública dirigida a niños, niñas y adolescentes, escuchando y levantando y tomando la voz, la mirada y la perspectiva de esos niños. Ahí creemos que se juega el desafío.
Muchas gracias. Víctor, cerramos con vos. Abrí el micrófono, por favor.
La esencia de las recomendaciones para mí pasan, o para nosotros como INCCIP pasan, por algo muy central, y es que el Estado que toma la resolución de privar de libertad a una persona por determinados actos que ha cometido, debe también hacerse responsable de esa decisión, en el sentido de las consecuencias de esa decisión. O sea, no puede ser que el Estado tome la decisión de encarcelar y que el problema que genera no sea problema de él, sino que debe asumir esa responsabilidad. Y asumir esa responsabilidad implica toda una serie de abanico de recomendaciones, desde el cuidado de la información, desde la humanización, diríamos, de las visitas carcelarias, el respeto a la opinión de los chicos si desean o no ir a una visita, el tema de el apoyo en los espacios escolares, el tema de lograr espacios para que, como se decía hoy, puedan conversar entre ellos y compartir sus experiencias, en fin, una serie de acciones. Otro elemento central de las recomendaciones es que no pretendemos programas nuevos, ni diferentes, ni específicos, sino que se trata de articular lo que hay, focalizando y visualizando la situación de vulnerabilidad de los chicos. Eso nos parece importante porque, de lo contrario, los programas específicos, por un lado, generan costos, pero por otro, estigmatizan. O sea, no son programas solo para ellos. Ellos son adolescentes como muchos más, y niños y niñas como muchos más de la sociedad que tiene diferentes problemas. Lo otro es, bueno, escuchar. El tema de la participación atraviesa todo el tema de las políticas públicas, el tema de la educación, el tema de las instituciones. A los adultos nos cuesta mucho pensar que los niños y niñas tienen cosas para decir y que esas cosas son importantes. Incluso muchas veces los propios chicos nos dicen que tienen entrevistas con autoridades, se sacan fotos, los atienden muy lindo, pero después las propuestas de ellos quedan en los cajones, o sea, no se toma en serio lo que se habla, se toma como un momento lindo, divertido, tal vez buena imagen, sacarse fotos con niños, todos los candidatos a cargos políticos andan besando niños por el mundo, pero el hecho es que no se trata de eso, sino que se trata de darles un lugar como personas, de respetarlos, de valorarlos, y con eso está la esencia de la cosa, porque si se les escucha, las recomendaciones que hemos hecho los organismos internacionales van a surgir también de los propios chicos, y van a ser de mucho más peso y mucho más concreción y mayor oportunidad que las que podamos hacer de organismos regionales.
Bueno, muchas gracias, Víctor. Muchas gracias a los organizadores de la conferencia por darnos este lugar especial. Gracias a Soledad, que nos ayudó con la traducción. Gracias de nuevo a Alison y a Kimberly, y gracias a todos por escucharnos. Un abrazo grande y estamos en contacto.
Thank you, Luciano. Thank you, Victor Giorgi, Gonzalo, the youth, Allison, Kimberly, and everyone who I see that has just recently joined us. I appreciate you all. I thank you for that information. There's lots of accolades and appreciation and even endorsing your message in the chat. It's wonderful, and it's so wonderful. Once again, we're hearing the voices of youth. And I'm reminded from Dr. Nancy Laux, who entered into the chat, that these problems are similar around the world. We're hearing these similar themes, that we should not over-incarcerate, that we've got to think about the children, that we've got to focus on public policy. That session has been streamed Facebook Live. Thankfully, the technology worked, or let's hope it did. I want to thank Soledad, the interpreter. Let's give the panel and the interpreters a round of applause. Thank you, Luciano. You are an angel behind the scenes. As we promised before we start our next session, we would invite Dr. Brooks and Dr. Kramer to come in and let us find out and let us hear what the youth are doing on the other side of Zoom. So Dr. Brooks, go ahead and take the stage as we get ready for our keynote speaker at 2:15, Dr. Whitney Hollins.
Hi, everybody. We're just here for 5 minutes. I'm here with a young person who is a qualified teacher, who is in her early 20s, who has lived experience. So she's part of our youth track. And we were just asking our young people in our youth track, what do they want people attending this conference, the researchers, the practitioners, the delegates, to be thinking about from the perspective of youth. So I want you to, I'm going to bounce off with Meg about our discussions that we just had, but this is Meg Lewis.
Hello.
Our young people. And yeah, over to you, Meg.
Okay, so we just had a little discussion about what we would like to change or work on as an organisation, and I obviously opened the floor for discussion. We spoke about like the lack of information provided to the innocent victims as such, like how we can improve that. So talking about plans, how can we help you, help your family. Also talked about schools, policies like the Child Protection Services or safeguarding here in the UK, and how sometimes education, people at the top can often use that as an excuse to discuss things that aren't relevant for discussion and just belong to the people who need to know. Lorna, do you have anything else? I've got a couple more if you want me to carry on.
Yeah, so I think that's really important. I think what young people were saying, and you know, so like I say, so you have lived experience yourself, don't you, Meg? And you were, how old were you, Meg, when your dad was incarcerated?
I was 11.
You were 11, and I know that he's obviously out now, and it's a past event for you, but reflecting back, I know that you had a really difficult time when you were in school and you felt very unsupported at the time. So, but what is definitely coming out loud and clear in the youth track, and they want everybody to consider, is sharing of information without, you know, the child's permission. If they say something to, say, one teacher or one support worker, why is that information passed on without checking with them first? And why is the term safeguarding in the UK, or it's, you know, it's a concern for child protection services, used as an excuse to, this is in, you know, from the perspective of young people, because most of our young people on the panel do not have child protection services in their lives. So grown-ups, helpers are sharing information perhaps from a good place, because they're thinking, if I share this, it will give them more support. But young people are feeling quite aggrieved that their information has been shared without checking in with them if it's okay to share it. By using the word, this is a child protection concern, or it is a child safeguarding concern, where actually that isn't the reality of the case. So that is coming out loud and clear. And the addresses of minors, that came up as well, didn't it, Meg?
Yeah, massive issue for those. I know when my dad was in prison, they shared his name and our address, and I was 11. I've got a younger brother who was about 8 at the time, and we are innocent. We have I had no idea what the crime was that my dad did at the time, but people in my school knew before I even had that opportunity to tell them, because they knew where I lived, and obviously they know my surname. So that was in like newspapers, on the website, it was on Facebook as well. So that's such an important thing to rethink and try and get, you know, obviously the media to change their view on, because, as I said, innocent victims don't need to be punished at all.
Yeah, so as an organization, if there's anything that we were asking INCCIP to think about in your research is, we know that in some countries, but not many, that the journalists have what's called a code of practice where they don't share addresses of minors, but most countries that doesn't exist. And if we could push as an organization for better protection of minors in the media when a parent commits an offence, I think that would be just an amazing achievement. You know, we know that the UN Convention of the Rights of the Child said children have a right to be safe in their homes, but they're not, because of the way that the media uses this sensationalism. So that was a big concern for our youth. But yeah, so those are the things. Yeah, well, I mean, we could go on, and we're actually going to go back now because we're starting our third and final session of our youth group right now. So we were just jumping in on our break. Yeah, Norway has a great example. So we all need to be Norway. Thank you, Nancy. We all can we make the whole globe like Norway when it comes to protecting kids? That would be great. Thank you so much, everyone. And enjoy the rest of your conference, and we'll check in with you again soon.
Thank you so much, Lorna.
Oh, thank you.
Yes, right on time. Thank you, Meg, so much for your ideas, your views, for informing and helping to remind us of the priorities and what this conference is all about. I appreciate you. Dr. Kramer, I know you guys have your hands full. Dr. Lorna, enjoy. Thank you for what you do. And we look forward to hearing from you all again. We have about 2 or 3 minutes before the next speaker comes up. The next speaker it's really exciting, and I'll give pause for a second while she is highlighted on the screen. We'll start at about 2:15, but I'm really excited to introduce our next speaker. She's full of energy, and I was introduced to her by Miss Yasmin Arrington. And I'll tell you, I heard a little bit about her, and Yasmin kept saying, you really have got to meet her. You really must meet her. And I'm saying, okay. She says she's full of energy. I'm thinking, okay, if I'm going to meet my match, let it be so when I talk with her, right? Sure enough, I talked with her, and I just wanted to stay on the phone with her forever. She's got an infectious personality. She's a wonderful individual. She can tell you more about herself than I possibly can from an overview of her resume, but in brief, she's an advocate for children who have a parent involved in the justice system. She is a daughter of a justice-aligned individual, so she has direct experience. She is a researcher, an educator, an author, and the list goes on. She is on the advisory board for the organization that many of you have heard of, We've Got Us Now, with Miss Ebony Underwood. She's a CUNY graduate, and her dissertation focused on children who have justice-aligned parents, with emphasis on that key element, lived experience. I have great honor. It is 2:14. I'll allow the speakers to highlight you. Miss Dr. Whitney Hollins, it is so good to see you. And I will stop sharing my screen.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for that introduction. And I was just listening to everyone else present, and I was over here. I was like, yes, all of these things, right? So it was really great to be able to hear what everyone was saying. I was trying to make sure that my lighting looks good. I look good. You can hear me? All right, perfect. So before I begin, I just wanted to acknowledge that the space that we're in right now, which is the COVID-19 pandemic, which has been difficult for everyone, but I think it's been especially difficult for people who are incarcerated and their families and loved ones. Incarceration provides a unique obstacle to dealing with the pandemic. And I'm speaking, from the United States for that perspective, but I'm sure it's quite similar all over, where a lot of people who are imprisoned just didn't have access or didn't have the option to social distance or to wear a mask or all of these different things. And then anecdotally, I've heard stories of children who were afraid to talk to their parents on the phone because they were worried about the crowding around the phones. And so I just think that there were a lot of things that came up with the pandemic that's been really difficult for all of us, but especially difficult for those who are currently in jails and prisons and their loved ones. And I also want to acknowledge the privilege of being here for myself and everyone else, because I find that a lot of times when I'm in these spaces, which I'm incredibly grateful to be in, there's always people who can't be here, whether it's because of work. Sometimes for conferences, you know, pre-COVID, it was the distance and the travel. Sometimes it's the fees, right, for the conference. I've had conferences where they told me how much it costs to register, and I was like, well, I don't know about that. So I just want to acknowledge the people who can't always be in the spaces for whatever reason. Sometimes it's because they don't even know that these spaces exist. And so I'm really happy to be here and just want to acknowledge that fact, because I grew up not knowing that a lot of these spaces existed. And I'm sure that that still is the case for many children who are impacted by parental incarceration. So as Dr. Hart-Johnson said, I'm Dr. Whitney Q. Hollins. I'm an educator, advocate, researcher, and the child of a formerly incarcerated parent. And I use that term because I want to acknowledge the fact that my father is no longer incarcerated, but also that's sort of, I have been in and out of that space many times, right? My father has been incarcerated and then he came home. So I was a child of an incarcerated parent, and then I was a child of a formerly incarcerated parent, and then I was back to being the child of an incarcerated parent. And we did that back and forth a lot. And I think that that is a story of many children who experience parental incarceration. We know that recidivism rates are quite high. And so I use that identifier to signal where I'm at in life, but acknowledge that it could change very quickly. And for a lot of our children, it will change back and forth, hopefully not too many times, but it is a possibility. I also wanted to acknowledge that I'm speaking from the perspective, I experienced parental incarceration in the United States. I did my research in the United States, and a lot of the things that I'm hearing, especially, you know, from the presentation, just from Latin America, sound very much aligned with what is happening in the United States. But I also think the United States, being the world's leading incarcerator, the history of race and racism in the country really lends itself to have some interesting ways that this situation presents and some obstacles. So I want to acknowledge that I do think there will be things that may be specific to the United States, but also things that align just hearing the other presentations. So with that being said, I would like to sort of start at the beginning, which is always a good place, and just say that I don't remember the details of my father's first incarceration, his first prison bid, as they call him. He was incarcerated 3 different times when I was a youth, 2 of them before I reached middle school. And the 3rd time was when I was 11, and he was sentenced to 22 years in federal prison. And so when he was incarcerated when I was 11, I did not see him again until I was 31 years old. We maintained some type of contact, but if you are familiar with federal prisons in the United States, they tend to be very far away from everything. They are often placed in rural communities. He was in Kentucky, and then he was in New Jersey, and then he was in Ohio. And I believe I asked him one time how many facilities he was in, and it was somewhere between 8 to 10. And at times they were 10 hours away from where I lived. And you can imagine me as an adolescent coming into this space, and I was really just tired of it. I didn't want to spend my weekends going to visit. I didn't want to be in a car for 8 hours. I didn't understand why I had to do it. So I was going through all these normal preteen and teenage things, right? But the difference was I was doing it with a parent who wasn't present in the household. They were incarcerated. So it was a little bit different. And so when I say I don't recall the details, I don't think I knew exactly what my father was incarcerated for until I was older. So he was, I'm going to call him a victim of the 3 strikes rule, which is where if you were arrested for the same offense 3 times, then you got a mandatory sentence. So he was arrested on drug charges 3 separate times, and that's why his last sentence was 22 years. So I would like to acknowledge the victims of these mandatory sentences that sometimes are just ridiculously long in nature. And also I want to acknowledge that parental incarceration is a complex situation that's full of nuance, right? No two people's situations are exactly the same. I grew up in a household with brothers. Our situations aren't exactly the same. We share a parent, and it still wasn't the same reaction. We didn't process it in the same way. We didn't react in the same way. We didn't have the exact same experiences. So it is very difficult at times to generalize. And so when I share parts of my story, I understand that some of it may relate to other people and some of it may be very specific to what I experienced because of the way it affected me. So for example, we know that a lot of children in the United States that are in foster care because of parental incarceration. I did not have that experience. My father was incarcerated. He wasn't living in the house when he was incarcerated. So my living situation didn't necessarily change. I wasn't disrupted out of my home. I didn't have to go to foster care. I didn't go to, multiple different families. I have spoken to other people, I've spoken to youth who did end up in foster care because their parent was incarcerated, and their situation is very different than mine. We do have some similarities, but it presented itself in a different way. So I just want to acknowledge that this is a situation that's full of complexities, requires a lot of nuance, and that everyone has different situations. Even though we have this umbrella topic of parental incarceration, it's going to affect everybody in different ways, and their story is going to be different. So I wanted to start talking about the research because that's like a big area for me. And when I say research, I'm going to use it in two different ways, because I think when we say research, often we're talking about academic research, right? You get the degrees, you have to go through the IRB process, there's a board. I've done this research, but there's also the research of having lived experience. And so I have done involuntary research, right? Like my life is research. And I want to reframe that when we talk about research on this topic, we acknowledge that children of incarcerated parents are doing a form of involuntary research. And if I had to say which one I learned the most from or which motivates me the most, it is my lived experience. It's not the research I did in an academic setting. And that's not to say that that type of research isn't important, but I do think it's time to start acknowledging lived experience as expertise, and acknowledging that the stories that the youth have to tell are not just stories, they are research. They have already what the researchers are aiming to get, right? They may not have the scope of everything that's going on, but they already possess that. They had no choice. So I did want to just acknowledge that I'm going to be using the word research in different ways. So for me, one thing that I wanted to highlight is, and I think that it got me to the point where I was going to do my PhD, is that one reaction that I had to my father's incarceration was that I tended to be a bit overachiever in school. And so for me, that's how I did it. And my brother was kind of the opposite. He was like, this school thing, I'm not into it. But for me, I felt like school was a place I had control, right? I was good at it. I had control. If I put A in, I knew I was going to get this out. And it felt very, it didn't feel chaotic. It felt very predictable to me. And so one thing I want to acknowledge is that when people talk about children with incarcerated parents, they often talk about adverse outcomes and all the things that happen that could go wrong, right? Children with incarcerated parents tend to do worse in school. They tend to have, could have future problems with substance, all these different adverse outcomes. And I think lately there's been a shift to more strength-based research, but I also just want to highlight the fact that sometimes what we view as strength-based isn't always positive. For me, I was an overachiever, and some may say, oh my goodness, you had this positive trauma response. You did great in school, but it really became my identity. And I tell people this story that when I was in 6th grade, I had been on the honor roll for so long. And my science teacher gave me a B, and I had an absolute meltdown. Like I just did not know who I was anymore. I went home, I was inconsolable. My mom had to meet with him. And I think this man just changed my grade to just be like, ma'am, it's 6th grade science. It's not that serious. But I just didn't know what to do. I was beside myself. And so I think sometimes we present in a way that people view as positive, but on the inside, it can really have a negative effect, the amount of pressure we put on ourselves. And I think that for me, I was really trying to combat this negative stereotype of, families that were impacted by incarceration. And I was going to get ahead of it, right? No one was going to look down on me. I did great in school. I was a model student. And when that didn't work out exactly how I wanted it to, I did not have the emotional ability to cope with it. So I just want to say that because I think sometimes, you know, while I view the shift to strength-based research as positive, sometimes what we view as positive and give accolades for can really mask what's going on with a child internally. And, you know, my mother always says to me, the squeaky wheel gets the oil, right? But not all children present in a way that they're squeaking, right? Some children present in this way that they put an intense pressure on themselves to be perfect. And we say, yay, you're doing great in spite of this. Wow, look at you. And really internally, something else may be going on. So we need to check in with everyone and not just sort of highlight these things that we feel are great because it could be masking something else. I ended up becoming an educator. I worked in New York City public schools for 13 years. And it was during this time that parental incarceration moved from like a personal topic to one that was much more widespread for me. The kids are super nosy. I don't know if any of you have ever talked to like a 7-year-old. Miss, who do you live with? You know, I live by myself. Well, where's your mom? What do you do when you're sick? Where's your dad? You know? And so for me, my father's incarceration was something that I didn't talk about, but I didn't hide. If you asked me about it, I would share with you. If it didn't come up, I wouldn't. So when the kids asked me about it, I was pretty transparent. I was like, you know, well, my mom lives out of state, my dad's incarcerated. And I mean to tell you that children are the wonders of the world, right? Because there was no judgment. They didn't miss a beat. They were just like, okay, and kept it moving. And it was really through sharing that with them that a lot of them started to tell me like, well, you know, my uncle was incarcerated or my dad's locked up, or, you know, even one time one of my students brought in, and I think this is so funny because he reminded me of me when I was young. He brought in a card that his father had sent him. And if anyone's ever received a card from prison and they have like the resident artist in there who's like doing all these cards, but when I was younger, I thought my dad went to prison and became like an artist all of a sudden. And he was like, look what my dad drew. And I was like, wow, everyone does go to, you know, when they go to prison, they really pick up new skills. And I remember thinking that when I was young, and he just thought the same way, but he was just showing me this and he was so proud. And it really made me think as an educator, like, well, what are we doing for these children in schools? And the answer was really nothing because we didn't even know who they were. There was no way to track it. I was a special educator, so I had access to like social histories. And sometimes if a child was in foster care, I would get that information. But for the most part, there was no way to tell. And then after doing some research on the topic, I understood why there's not really a reason to tell educators. I shouldn't say there's not a reason to tell educators, why some families are hesitant to tell educators, right? So I was like, we need to do something. So when I decided I was going to go back and do my PhD, I really wanted to focus on supporting children of incarcerated parents in schools and how we could do that and what that would look like. And I started reading this literature, and I want to say this is like 2013, 2014. I started reading this literature and it was depressing. I tell everyone the same thing. I was like, oh, well, this doesn't sound great. You know, if I had read this when I was young, thinking about, you know, they're talking about me. This is my identity. This is personal to me. You know, I'm going to do poorly in school. I'm going to have antisocial behaviors. I might be predisposed to using drugs or all these type of things. Even some studies I read where it was like, oh, you might have a lower IQ. And I was like, well, geez, what is happening? What's going on? And so I was like, that's not my story. But of course, you know, just because something isn't my story doesn't mean that it's not true. But I really wanted to investigate why this was happening or where this research was coming from. And a lot of it seemed to be repeating the same questions over and over and over again. So if you read research about the topic, I'm sure you've read a million studies about intergenerational crime, all of those different things. And I've read like 10 different studies on intergenerational crime, and each one comes to the same conclusion. Like, we can't link it, but we're still going to try. We can't link it, but we're still going to try. And I'm like, can I ask why you keep trying? Like, I feel like that's a fair question. Why do you keep trying? And that's not a slight to anyone doing the research that they feel is important work. But I do think we have to start to question, who are we doing research for? And why are we doing the research? And I remember mentoring a young girl who had an incarcerated father. And her mother, when she met me, was just so pleased that I seemed, like a normal functioning human being, right? That I grew up and I didn't fall into any of these things that she thought may happen. And I was writing a chapter for a book one time, co-authoring. Let me not take all the credit in this like recorded space. I was co-authoring a chapter for a book. And I put in a part about the mother being so excited and how as researchers, we need to be careful about what we're perpetuating, right? Or what can be co-opted from our findings, how people could misuse what we're saying in different ways. And the editor made a comment to me, well, I don't think that parents read research to even know that. And it dawned on me how unaware we are how influential research can be, right? And then also, well, if you're not writing for the community that you're intending to help, who are you writing for? Am I writing to see change in this community, or am I writing for someone else at another university to read this and be like, wow, gee, that was great work. If it's not accessible to the community that you want to serve, why are you doing the work? And it took me a long time to come out and say that, because you want to be accepted in academic circles, right? And there's sort of a status quo, and there's a way that things go, and there's a way that good research is done, and it's objective, and it's all of these different things. But I started to wonder, you know, what exactly is the intention of your research? And that's not to say people have bad intentions, but if you have no intention, if the intention isn't to support the community, then maybe you should research something else, because these are people's lives. And so for me, I wanted to be clear about making that, forefronting that when I was doing my own research. And I finished my dissertation. It's not a large study, it's a qualitative study. And it's really forefronting youth voices as in lived experience, as expertise. And it's actually was published by Routledge this month, September. Yeah, it's still September. You see where I'm at in my mind, it's still September. But I say that to say that I wanted to make a point where I'm not objective. I'm totally invested in this community. And I want to be clear about that. If someone wants to criticize me and say like, oh, I'm supposed to be wearing a lab coat and observing somewhere and not feel anything about it, I absolutely feel for it. It's in my heart. I'm directly impacted. I want to help. I want to support. My agenda is to highlight the good and the strengths that this community has. And that's where I'm at with it. So that was important to me. And it took a lot of confidence in myself, especially growing up, as I just said, really seeking external validation for my worth because of this situation, to be confident enough to say like, okay, well, this is where I'm at. So my heart was definitely in it. I'm not an objective party. I'm not coming here to you today as an objective party. I definitely have an agenda, and I'm confident and clear, and I'm okay with having that agenda and any criticism that may invite. I think more people should examine why they're doing research in this community, and if their heart isn't in it, they might consider researching something else, because these are people's lives. And whether you feel like you're writing for an academic audience, research influences language, the language that we use. It influences policy, and policy influences the resources that certain communities get, and it trickles down to different systems and to people. So I think the idea that our research doesn't impact the people that we're researching or writing about is false. And also, I think the idea that you would even want it to be separate from the people that you're researching or writing about is unfortunate. I think that you should want it to impact and be accessible to the people that you are writing about. So for me, one of the lenses that I took in this book, and like I said, I'm speaking from the United States, is how often I've read literature that, one, leaves out the voices of youth, that will talk to people around them, but won't talk to them. Two, does not address racism and poverty in this country. And I don't know how we have conversations, especially in the United States, about parental incarceration, mass incarceration, without acknowledging racism and poverty in this country. So I'll give an example. A lot of the talk about children of incarcerated parents having adverse outcomes in schools. Many poor children in this country have adverse outcomes in schools. many Black children in this country had adverse outcomes in schools. Not all, but there's already research surrounding that. It already exists. We've seen this time after time. So when we talk about parental incarcerated, children of incarcerated parents as a completely separate group, how can we have that conversation? We can't. It's impossible. 1 in 9 children in the Black children in the United States has an incarcerated parent. That number is 1 in 52 for white children in the United States. We cannot have a conversation about children of incarcerated parents in this country without examining the effects of race and racism. And for me, when I read studies that are completely just in this bubble of children of incarcerated parents, and I get it, we're a unique population and we should have our own resources, but we can't be completely micro. Large scale systemic change has to happen. And it was great for me to hear, so many people saying, well, we have to decarcerate. Yeah, of course, because if less people are incarcerated, we have less children of incarcerated parents. So what's the number one thing you could do to support children of incarcerated parents? Well, make less of them, get their parents home. That would be the number one thing. But how do we do that? Well, we have to examine how we got to mass incarceration in the first place, right? Why are so many Black, Latino people disproportionately incarcerated in the United States? And then in turn, it disproportionately affects children of color in this country. So for me, when I see these conversations that are happening in this sort of bubble without acknowledging all of these things, I feel like we're missing a huge piece of this, because I could create program after program after program. And that's wonderful. And I don't want to knock it. I think we should have all the programs, don't get me wrong. But at the same time, if I keep creating programs and don't address how we got here in the first place, I'm really missing an opportunity to create large scale change. So I think that has to be part of the conversation. And I also, even outside of race and racism, when we talk about schools and children of incarcerated parents, when people write these things up, are we looking at the culture of the school? Are we looking at the performance of the school? Are we looking at the environment the school is providing? Because when we simply say children of incarcerated parents have adverse educational outcomes, that puts the onus and blame on the families and children versus the systems that are in place that create this type of outcome. So I think we need to reframe when we're talking about children of incarcerated parents, acknowledge the unique circumstances that it presents, but also be clear about the large scale change that needs to happen in order to really combat this. If mass incarceration doesn't change, if the factors that lead to mass incarceration do not change, we are not going to see a decrease in children of incarcerated parents. And yes, it's all well and good to say, oh, let's create programs to make children of incarcerated parents more resilient. But then we should ask, why do they have to be resilient in the first place? Why are we creating such difficult systems? Why are we placing parents 10 hours away? Why are we locking people up for drugs instead of getting them help or rehabilitating or getting them the services they need? And then we see people who are getting incarcerated time after time after time again, and we're like, we can't figure it out. They're just helpless or they're hopeless. But we're not really helping. We're not really supporting. We're not really instituting that large scale change, which would really make a difference. So I just implore people to sort of move from that micro children of incarcerated parents and think about what are the larger systems in place that created what we're all here to talk about in the first place, because there are a lot of moving parts and factors that influence this being such a large and important topic, especially in the United States. And just moving forward, I would encourage anyone who's interested in this topic, who's doing research, to look at the new research. Like I said, there's been an explosion of research, it seems. I think that's the term the handbook on children of incarcerated parents uses. There's been an explosion of research on this topic in the last 5 years. Lots of new publications, lots of strength-based research, really some great things coming out, but also to look at things with a critical lens, to not only take in what's being said, but to ask questions about why are we researching this, and to ask new questions. I think in academia, sometimes that's frowned upon, like people want to build upon other people's works and you have to pull in things from different places that people have already done, but maybe reframing the question. And as you could tell, I have a bone to pick with this intergenerational criminality, these studies that keep getting repeatedly done. It really bothers me a little bit. So I just want to ask why, like really take a critical look at why we're asking certain questions, why we're not asking other questions, and why we're not moving forward instead of just sort of trying to stay in the same place and prove some sort of narrative. And also think about the ways that our research, whether well-intentioned or not, can be co-opted, misused, and used in ways that we didn't intend for, but it's a possibility because once your work is out there, people can take it and they could spin it and report on it how they want. So that was really what I came to say. I know I only have about 5 more minutes. And before I give any space for anyone who had anything to say, I just wanted to thank you for taking the time to listen to me, for being here. And I will tell you just in full transparency, it was a tough day for me to just get up and to be here and be in this space. But I'm always happy when I'm in the community and when I'm surrounded by people who are interested in this topic and doing this work. And so it was a privilege for me to be here and to be able to speak to you. And Dr. Hart-Johnson, I will turn it over to you. And I know we only have a few minutes left.
Thank you, Whitney. I appreciate your presentation and the reminders. It sounds like I'm frozen, but also as the reminders of being researchers and making sure that we're focusing on the right intent, making sure that we are careful, even with the language and how we frame our research questions, that there are lives at stake. And I just want to say that what a beautiful personality you have. What wonderful work you've done. Congratulations on your upcoming book. Awesome, awesome. Let me ask Monique if there are any questions or any feedback in the chat. Let me open up the floor for anyone that would like to ask questions of Dr. Whitney Hollins.
No questions at all, but a lot of accolades in the comments.
And you'll have to unmute yourself.
So, I'm still muted. Can you hear me? I mean, can you guys
yes, we can hear you. We
can hear you. Okay, great. I thought I was unmuted. No questions, but a lot of accolades in the comments. A lot of people congratulating you and saying that they're really proud and this is some amazing work that you're doing. And other people have similar programs and things going on in their countries too.
Excellent, excellent. Okay, we're coming up on a break. I encourage you to use this time to tap into anything that you would like to ask Dr. Whitney. Any feedback you'd like to give her. There's lots and lots and lots of accolades here. Dr. Barkley says you presented in a phenomenal way. I agree. I love the energy. Don't you all just love the energy? Let's give her a round of applause for that. Excellent, excellent. Ms. Bates says, great presentation. Ms. Sherry Shear, my good friend from Quick, says she couldn't stop listening. Just a great, great presentation. It's good to see you all. We have about, let's see. We have about 15 minutes before our next session. Dr. Whitney, I want to thank you so much for coming. When I reached out to her through the invitation, she said yes right away. And I said, this is great, because it's hard to get the level of talent that we have here today. And you know that they're busy, you know that they're in demand. So I appreciate that when she showed up with her truth, fully present, and actually, speaking to us in the genuine voice. It is so good to see you in person, over Zoom, and I appreciate you. Everyone, another round of applause for Dr. Whitney. I'm going to ask Matthew if he would do me a favor and bring up the slide and share the slide for breakout room 1 through 6 at 3:00 p.m. so that our presenters as well as our attendees know where to go. Any keynote speaker, please feel free to stick around, join us The breakouts are going to be open in a second. I believe that Patricia just posted the breakout rooms there. We have Dr. Liz Gordon, Hamad, and Allison, and a few others who are there in your chat. Please self-select. If you would wish to do so early, grab yourself something to eat, to drink, to nibble on, to refresh, and we'll see you soon. Hello, everyone. I just want to remind you that the breakout rooms are open in about 2 minutes. There are people who have already started to enter into breakout rooms, 1 through, I believe, 6. I think Patricia is going to drop the rooms in the chat once again. If you're having challenges getting to the breakout rooms, just simply tell us what breakout room you would like to be in, and we'll place you in that breakout room. The default position is to be placed in the meet and greet, which will occur at about 5 after 3. So enjoy the sessions. As you can see, breakout rooms 1 through 6 are assigned on your screen. Should you enter a breakout room and want to leave, there is an option also that you can leave that breakout room and join another. So enjoy the afternoon sessions. I also want to mention that after the 3 o'clock to 3:30 breakout sessions, we have a 30-minute intermission, and at 4 o'clock, we will once again be able to start the 4 o'clock to 4:30 breakout sessions. This information will be entered into the chat, and you'll also see the next set of breakouts on the screen. Thank you. As a reminder, everyone, the breakout rooms are now open. Breakout rooms number 1 through 6 are available. If you're having any challenges whatsoever to enter the breakout rooms, please locate the chat, click on it, and place the room number in the chat, and we'll be happy to escort you there. In about 5 minutes, we'll move everyone that's in the general room to the meet and greet, where you can have a conversation with your colleagues or peers. Thank you. Hello, Ken. Can you hear me? Ken?
Hi, Ken, we cannot hear you, but if you need help, just write it on the chat and we are going to support you.
I think I'm all set now. Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you. Ken, I believe that you were scheduled for 3 o'clock for breakout room 5. Let me see what we can do let me see how full we are. We might be able to make an adjustment to put you in the 4 o'clock, because I think everybody kind of broke out and went to the breakout rooms.
Isn't it 3 o'clock right now?
It's 3:05, but I think people, I mean, you can go into the breakout room. Let's get you in there. Just click on join your breakout number 5. And let's see if people will show up. We still have a few people left here, but some people are in the meet and greet.
Okay.
So let's just see, and we'll be flexible.
Hi, Katie, how can I help you?
Hi, is Luciano having his breakout in room 6? It says meet and greet, but is that Luciano?
Yeah, Luciano is not having his session. It's a meet and greet in there, I think.
Got it.
I think he indicated that he wanted to move his session. He had a pretty heavy lift today.
He's going to be there tomorrow.
Yep.
Okay, I'm going to take a break since I just finished.
I think you should, yeah.
I'm going to come back at 4 or.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, get some water. Enjoy.
We had over 25 youth show up.
Oh, nice. Excellent.
Throughout the morning.
Excellent.
Okay. All right.
Good for you. Okay, talk to you later.
Bye.
Maybe, Ivan, I'm going to join the meet and greet, and then I'm going to tell them that Dr. Ken is on room 5, if they want to.
That's a great idea. Thank you for that. Matthew, you're doing an excellent job. Thank you so much.
Dr. Ken, do you want us to put you in a breakout room? Or
He looks like he might be He might be frozen. Oh, okay. Dr. Ken, would you like to be placed in a breakout room? I think you're on mute. Would you like for us to place you
pick something. Pick an interesting one and put me in.
Okay, let's put him in. Let's take you into, let's take you to breakout number 3. think about these things and we go into these, the breakout sessions, think about what that takeaway is. Let me call on Dr. Liz Gordon. How did your session go?
Let's get in here, just let me find some video. There we go. It was very interesting. You know, what I wanted to do was to just raise some of the principles that have come through about women's imprisonment. And I ran a provocative session. So the first point I made, which has come out of a movement that you might know about, Avon, in the US, which is never imprison women. And you know, everybody disagreed with that, but the point is, it's a great starting point because it allows you to ask questions about why do we imprison women? You know, their crimes are very different, generally speaking, from those of men. You know, they're much less likely to be involved in violent crime and much more likely to be involved in drug crime. But here in New Zealand, there's a lot of fraud crime and theft crime. And these are social crimes. These are crimes of poverty, and you know, but they're not great big heists. What they are is people stealing a bit. To, you know, we had the situation of people stealing period products in order to, you know, because they couldn't afford them. And the issue of period poverty has been a big one. Food poverty and food insecurity are just huge. And I introduced them to my project, working on the policy question of should we have a women's open prison in New Zealand? It's a really simple question. I've got great funding to do it, and
excellent.
It just raises the questions about the systems of incarceration we use, the use of state power against women, the burdens that women carry with being generally the caregivers of their children when they go into prison. You know, men may or may not be caregivers. They're not usually the main caregiver. And so women have all that burden. The children then bear the burden outside. And often the harm of going to prison can far outweigh the harm caused by the crime in the first place.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, we're just exploring those issues. And I did invite the people in my session to join me as international correspondents because I'm doing a consultative process. And I'd love to have some people from all around the world to actually talk to and reflect on experiences. And I told them all to contact you for my email address, Avon, so because I don't know how we have the ability to. I suppose I can put it on here actually. I'll kind of message people.
Yeah, let's put that information in the chat so that they can contact you, Liz. That's a great call for action. I see Allison on the screen. So good to see you. See us, support us. How did your session go? And anything you want to share as a call to action?
Yes, first of all, so awesome to see so many friendly faces on my screen. This has been fabulous to be part of this conference and be all together. I did want to make a comment real quick about what was said about video visiting and the fears about it replacing in-person visits. In the United States, it's a very real fear. A lot of jails are reducing and in some instances completely eliminating in-person visits. In New York State, our call to action around video visiting is that we are actively pushing a bill that would protect the right to in-person visits to ensure that video visiting cannot reduce or replace in-person visiting. And so I encourage others to think about trying to get some type of legislation to protect in-person visits in their states, territories, and their country. There's also a federal legislation that has been introduced but not passed, sponsored by Tammy Tucker. So with that said, See Us Support Us. It's See Us Support Us month begins October 1st. See Us Support Us is an initiative to raise awareness about children of incarcerated parents and to encourage folks to have awareness raising events in their own communities and to share tips, strategies, and actions to better support children of incarcerated parents. I'm going to put information about SIA Support Us in the on the chat, the website, a flyer that you can share with others. We invite everyone to follow SIA Support Us throughout October and then all year long. And I do want to plug our youth listening sessions that we're holding on October 19th and 27th, which are free and virtual. And those sessions will focus on supporting students with incarcerated parents' educational success and well-being from early childhood through college. Hear directly from young people and those who are working in educational spaces about how to see and support children. All that information is on the SIA Support Us website.
Excellent, excellent, excellent. Last but not least, let me ask Hamed how things went. And I also want to let you all know that we are actually in a break, but I love the engagement and the opportunities for you all to connect, because that's what it's all about. How'd your session go, Hamed?
You should ask people who attend the meeting. For me, it was a really great opportunity to have some experts in the room. We communicate about how the organization from outside of the country can collaborate and can deliver some message to that country. I launched a online virtual campaign on Instagram from the place that I live and the organization based in the US to Persian people from in Iran who deal with the parental incarceration. So I try to explain how this campaign as a non-profit organization and the international organization, we try to reach out to them and be helpful and have some source of resource for them available in Farsi.
Excellent. Thank you for sharing. So you can hear that there are many calls to action. You all, it seems like you guys are getting filled with all sorts of information, idea sharing, and collaborating. I'm seeing a few people in the meet and greets. I popped into one of those sessions and it was a lively discussion going on. So I was happy about that. I invite you all to certainly visit. For our next upcoming session, it starts at 4. I encourage you to get up, stand up, stretch, get some water, get some tea, get some coffee. Take a 10-minute break and meet us back here. The breakout rooms will be open again. If you need help, our trustee team will actually help you get situated in a room. I'm so happy that you guys are having a good time on day 1. I'll see you soon.
In 5 minutes, the breakout rooms are going to start, so please choose your room. And if you need any help, just let us know. Okay, thank you.
Please also make note that there's a change to the schedule. We have Dr. Ken Stuthers in breakout room number 3. So please do show him your support. By way of announcement, I want to remind you that breakout room 3 is for Dr. Ken Stuthers. I also want to give you the heads up that breakout room 4 and 5, I'm actually looking for Jennifer and Martha. So if you're here, let me know. Okay, I see Jennifer. There you go. Perfect.
I had to restart. I had to restart to get my Zoom to share screen. So if you want to bump me over, I'm good to go.
Okay, no worries, no worries. So you are in breakout number 4. All right, so breakout number 1, we've got a panel discussion going on. So anybody that wants to go to breakout number 1, please feel free to do so. You can also see breakout rooms 2 through 6. You're welcome to join those breakout sessions. Again, as with the rest of the day, if you want to join a breakout session and you don't know how, just put the breakout number in the chat and we'll bump you over to that session.
Avon, could you check, please, your chat?
Yes. I would, hold on for a second. Of course I remember you. Sorry about that weird echo.
Yeah. It is echoing.
This might be slightly better. Yes, so yeah, I met a lot of people at ASU. So a lot of people here, you know, we were in attendance. I think Sherry was there too. Were you at ASU, Sherry? Yeah, she was there. Yes. And at Huddersfield. And I think Sherry and I met in New Zealand. So it's quite remarkable. You know, we've just become one big happy family.
Absolutely.
How have you been?
I've been great. How about you?
Let's see. I think you're on mute.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you now, yes.
Yeah, I've been wonderful. How have you been?
Still doing the work.
Absolutely.
Been doing great. Yeah.
I admire the work you do.
Yeah, I always say we don't do it alone, and that's the importance of these connections. We've got to remain connected because it's bigger than us. It's so much bigger than us. So this is great because it gives us a chance to, you know, to kind of refocus and fine tune our messaging in terms of where we should be focusing. And the young people are doing a great job in reminding us of what's important.
Yes.
Yeah. So it's just, it's great. Great to see you.
It's great to see you. I was very excited when I got the email about the conference, and it's been a wonderful day.
Oh, good. I'm glad to hear it. A lot of great speakers and great presenters, and you know, this whole pandemic thing is making things a little bit on the tricky side, because while people have you know, the best intent, you know, things crop up, and there you have it. So, but for the most part, we've got a lot of presenters, and there's at least 3 sessions going on in parallel at any given time, and, you know, a meet and greet. So it's quite wonderful.
It's been a great day.
That's good.
I'm glad it was virtual. That's the only way I would have been able to attend it. So I'm grateful for the virtual conference.
Yeah, that's what I say. You know, this virtual offering opens the door for so many people, including, you know, people, you know, in countries where, you know, they can't travel, you know, and we're not accepting people, you know, from everywhere. So, and then we've got these quarantine things going on. So, but we've done well. You know, we've found a way to get through this experience. So, you know, good for us.
Absolutely. You've done a great job.
Thank you. Thank you. So Dr. Sheriff Smith, it is 4:35 on the East Coast, and everyone has attended a session, 4 o'clock to 4:35, and they should be all coming back in. There we go. Welcome back. It's so good to see everybody. Everybody's still coming in with smiles on their faces. It must have been a great session, a great breakout session. I'm so happy to see you all back with us. Some of you are just joining us. If you are, we have just had a fantastic day, or at least I have enjoyed myself. I don't know about you. If you have, then let's give our speakers and our presenters a round of applause. Absolutely. So today, we focused a little bit on policy. We focused on the messaging from the young folks who helped us to open the conference with their welcome panel and their message. We focused a little bit on specific topics that seem to resonate with everyone, including, the idea of in-person visits being replaced. And we got a call to action saying that, we need to keep our eye on this. We need to keep our eye on advocacy. We need to keep our eye on policy. We need to make sure that we understand the legalities. Dr. Ann Skelton from the United Nations popped out of her session from the Committee on the Rights of the Child and joined us and gave us a powerful and impactful keynote. We had an international session. We've got to give Luciano a hand and the great interpretation. Hopefully you all were able to find the interpretation button, click English, and hear that translation go on. I found it fascinating to watch those dynamics, and I just thought it was absolutely awesome. We had a number of breakout rooms, and I will tell you that a few of those got moved around and got canceled. We've got time zone differences, and so sometimes issues do crop up, but it doesn't matter because we are agile and we are flexible and we'll make it happen. There was a session that was canceled just a moment. In the previous session, the speaker was ill and she was going to try to make the session. Unfortunately, she could not. So as I indicated, we are flexible. I'm excited to let you all know that at 7:30 p.m., using the same links, we have an international session that will be streamed from South Korea. So if you're on the West Coast, you're probably, bright and chipper and ready to still, forge ahead. If you're in New Zealand, like Dr. Liz, it's morning time. So she's having her second cup of coffee. So please do join at 7:30 p.m. to support our international speakers. I encourage you to get something to eat, to drink, to refresh, do whatever you need to. I know that those of you in the United Kingdom, it's going to be pretty late. We will record these sessions in the main area. So we'll make sure that we do that. I want to remind you that we have an ongoing contest going on. Of course, we don't need to have a contest for building relationships, but during the announcement, Dr. Cheryl Mercer mentioned that on the first day, we're focusing on striving. So we want you to strive to build relationships and connections. And we'll announce the winner tomorrow. We'll ask for you all to put those, the number of relationships or connections that you have formed in the chat, and then we'll tally those things up and make the announcements towards the end of our day or afternoon. Tomorrow, do not forget to bring a stuffed animal. The day 2 theme is thriving. So we ask you to bring a stuffed animal that represents your superpower. So a stuffed animal or a toy that represents your superpower. And we'll have some fun with it. We'll have a random drawing. And then of course, the third day is to wear your hat. Now I see a fantastic looking hat on my screen. Miss Ebony, is so good to have you with us from Louisiana. You are styling and profiling that hat. We love it. At this point in time, let me yield and ask if we have any announcements from, let me pick on Dr. Kramer, and is Dr. Loke still here? Yep. Do you guys have anything that you would like to, any announcements you'd like to make before we close out this session of our conference for the day?
So I think, go ahead, sorry, Nan.
I was going to say to go first, please.
Just no announcements from the UChat track, just to let folks know as they join. We are running a simultaneous conference for young adults and youth, and we had over 25 folks participate from the US, Canada, Europe, Uganda. So it was pretty exciting. And we have another great lineup tomorrow with I think 4 keynote speakers, young folks, some of which will be coming in and presenting in the main conference. So just super excited that that's happening in parallel.
Excellent, excellent. Nancy?
Yeah, just thank you so much again for today. I mean, it's just been an incredible first day, and it's really positive just to see the interaction and the chat and the energy that's going back and forth. And just to remind people to hang on to that, because we want to keep you for the final session on Friday for the members meeting to talk about where we go from here. So thank you again so much.
Excellent, excellent. We have an excellent lineup tomorrow morning. We have Dr. Peter Scharf-Smith of Sweden. He will join us for the 9:30 keynote. And we also have a real treat. We have Yasmin Arrington of Scholarships. You heard briefly from her today. So she'll join us during the morning keynotes. And then of course we have an action-packed day. So I look forward to seeing you all. I'll see some of you this evening at 7:30 p.m. using the same Zoom link. There is no separate link. If you have any questions, I'll stick around to take your questions. Enjoy your break. If you're coming back with us, we will attempt to live stream that session as well. So enjoy your day, afternoon, night, evening, morning, wherever it is. Thank you.